Hi, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed this critical thought, a detailed discussion on game design, and be sure to subscribe and you can pitch future critical thought topics. Alright, for today's critical thought, we have a bit of serendipity to go over. I was looking at Gamasutra the other day and I noticed that they were promoting a blog post that they sometimes do. They call their timeless pieces. And the topic seemed very familiar. I thought someone stole something that I wrote, and then when I clicked it, it turned out to be a post that I wrote in 2015, way before there was ever a Game Wisdom YouTube channel. And it's only a very great topic and one that's very interesting and important when it comes to multiplayer based games. And that is cheating versus exploiting, and what it means for the consumers and the game designers. When we talk about people cheating in a video game, there tends to be that opinion that cheating and exploiting are one and the same. But that's not really the case. And from the post and from my own opinions, cheating is defined by when a player goes outside the game to modify, alter, or change the game to give themselves an unfair advantage or to go against the designer's wishes. So we can think of plenty of examples of this. From the high end of the spectrum, we can talk about people using Autobots or aimbots, modding a game to get infinite ammo, infinite cash, mods that can break a game just as hit a button and I beat the level, unfair advantages, spawning items, you name it. And as long as there's been video games, there have been mods like that. And from this point of view, it's very easy. This is just cheating. If you're going outside the game to alter to give yourself advantage, that's not cool. And as we've seen, most developers, or a whole lot of them, typically don't tolerate that. Now, on the subject of anti-cheat software and what goes into that, that is beyond the scope for today's critical thought. Now, what's very interesting and where things get a little bit murky is when we start talking about mods or scripts and such that either provide a one-side bonus or one-side viewpoint or are just quality of life features. And one of the biggest examples of this would be cosmetic mods. Gun skins, character skins, changing the lighting. Again, when it comes to modding a game, you're really only as limited as your imagination and the technical skills of the programmer. And we've seen plenty of games that have gone really crazy with mods. Again, you can look at stuff like what we see in the Elder Scrolls series, from very talented people adding in all manner of stuff, from My Little Pony, again, my favorite example, the Macho Man Randy Savage Dragon, and so on. And when it comes to cosmetic or aesthetic mods, I think most people and most designers are fine with it. As long as it doesn't give you any kind of advantage, and in most cases this is only seen on the client side or the player side, so the other players aren't affected, it's a nice thing, it's not going to be the end of the world. Now, where things get very interesting, and where I want to get your thoughts, are mods that are designed to either alter UI elements or completely change them to make the game easier to play. And we've seen some examples of this over the years. If you've watched anyone play professional World of Warcraft or high level or endgame World of Warcraft, chances are they use a very modified UI, usually with built-in macros, additional information displays, maybe even more spots for hotkeys and such. And this is used basically because it works better than the standard UI that WoW or that Blizzard designed. For fans of Payday 2, you've probably have heard the term Hoxhood used many times on the forums and in-game. Hoxhood is a popular UI mod that adds more information while you're playing the game. It gives you details such as how many pagers have been answered, how long the wave will end, and a lot more in terms of just general information that can help you play the game. And when it comes to these kinds of mods, a lot of people are split down the middle. Some feel that this is still an unfair advantage, because you're basically, again, you're changing the game files to suit your needs. And even though you're not giving yourself an explicit advantage, as in more ammo, more gold, stuff like that, you're still providing a different experience than what the designers originally intended. If the designers only wanted you to know A, B, and C, then modding in D, E, and F may be considered unfair. The supporters feel that these are quality of life improvements. They're not making me play the game better in the sense that they're giving me, enhanced advantages or enhanced abilities, but they simply make it easier for me to make use of my skill. Kind of like the difference between having like low quality equipment if you're like fishing or hunting versus getting the top of the line stuff. It will help, but at the end of the day, it's still the person's skill that matters. And this is what they feel when it comes to UI mods or quality of life changes like this. Another example would be the multitude of mods that are added to XCOM 2. There are, besides mods that just add in more skins, cosmetic features, new aliens models, there are a ton of quality of life mods that were added to XCOM 2. Some that let you see clearly if your unit's going to be flanking. Some that allow you to just automatically evacuate once everyone's on the escape zone instead of having to go through everyone's turn. And again, these are mods that they're not breaking the game. They're not giving you a clear advantage over someone who doesn't have it. It simply just makes the game easier to play. So my question for you folks, especially for anyone who's used them or designers, what do you think about things on that end of the line? Do you think quality of life or general improvement mods are fair game? And when we say fair game, you can include single player, multiplayer, or both. Now, while cheating is, after we've defined like that, is pretty, well, wow, my mouth is drying out, is pretty clear cut. The next topic is when we get a little bit more interesting, and that is the topic of exploits. And this is actually very interesting because exploiting is a very big part of speedrunning, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And speedrunning, at least from my knowledge, wasn't as popular when I wrote this post a few years ago. But when I think about exploiting, I'm thinking of my opinion or my definition is that the player is using the in-game systems and mechanics to basically circumvent or get around the design of the game. Now, the important part and the major distinction between cheating and exploiting is that exploiting happens from within. I am not changing any game files, I am not installing any mods, I am using what's in the game to create a powerful or completely one-sided advantage. And there are two big cases about this. The first one goes back to a topic I've talked about, that is breaking a game. Breaking is basically superior min-maxing and optimization to figure out the absolute de facto best way of playing a game. Anyone who's watched like high-level strategy game plays or even just multiplayer titles has probably seen how many extra players use popular or common high-level tactics that have been proven to be the best, such as bunny hopping and first-person shooting. And again, I'm not a competitive player, but I am sure just about any big name game out there has those little twists and tweaks and tactics to them. Another point is, if I know that weapon A has the all-around best advantages to anything else, and that's the one that I use all the time, that's another example of min-maxing. We're basically cutting out the fluff of the game and just getting straight down to, okay, I'm going to use this, this, and this, and that's the best combination in the game. And when we talk about RPGs, there are many RPG-based titles out there that have those kinds of breaking elements. That if you figure out the best combination of stats, best combination of skills, you're going to wipe the floor with everything in the game. And in some cases, that level is required for optional content. Now, the other side of exploiting, and going back to what I just said a minute ago regarding speedrunning, is using in-game bugs or glitches to your advantage. So, again, if you've watched like any speedrunning marathon, the Summer Games Done Quick or Awesome Games Done Quick series, you have seen players making use of bugs and glitches, be it damage boosting through the environment to circumvent a level, uh, trying to overload the game so that it slows down to get over a wall, figuring out that the hitbox for an enemy isn't completely there, so you get them from the one side and then you don't take any damage. And a very popular one is using the limitations of the AI to basically force the enemy into a repeated and safe pattern that then lets you just beat it without any fail or any challenge. And again, this sounds like it's cheating. But again, the distinction is that no one is changing or affecting the game to do this. This is all built within the game either as something that wasn't caught in QA or just simply quirks or glitches that no one could easily fix. And this is where things get very interesting when it comes to single versus multiplayer based games. Now, in single player games, designers normally don't care about this. If you figured out some super powerful way to circumvent a boss or skip a level, who cares? It's a single player game, you're not hurting anyone. But what happens when this is in a multiplayer environment, especially player versus player? And this is where things get very dicey. Now, from the post I wrote in 2015, the big news at the time was that Bungie was banning players from using an in-game exploit that was about, I think, the netcode or something about the host quitting during a raid boss that made that fight either easy or just an auto win. And there was a lot of controversy regarding Bungie's decision to ban people from using it. And this is where things get very tricky to debate. Again, an exploit is not the player doing anything from outside the game. It is simply them using what's in the game to either give them a major or sometimes completely one-sided advantage. So what do you do when something like that happens? And like I said, this is the big question. And from my thoughts about it, for designers watching this, if someone discovers an exploit in your game, you have to acknowledge it. Because it is far worse for you to say nothing and then try to change it than saying that we don't want you to do it. An example of an exploit from Payday 2, for instance, would be the item dupe glitch, which is if multiple players grab the same item within milliseconds of each other, the item duplicates, so everyone gets a key card, everyone gets a crowbar. It's just a lot easier to play. Now again, this is not something that the developers originally intended, but it was never really acknowledged and the developers never really tried to bounce or correct it. So it became a part of the game's strategy. Another thing that kind of helped it was the fact that it did require clear communications with the other players, and it was very easy for someone to go either too early or too late and mess the whole thing up. Another example that I'm trying to remember is from StarCraft, and how in the beginning of the game, if you cancel or create drones quickly enough, you can get an additional drone that goes above your population cap. Now, in these cases, again, this is not someone just finding something very easy, click a button, get an unfair advantage. This requires timing and precision. There we go. And typically, those exploits are looked a little bit more favorably. But again, it raises the question when you're in a competitive atmosphere. If I know that, let's say on a map, that if I get to this one spot that the invisible wall doesn't exist, I can hop into an area and then kill everyone. They can't get to me. Again, that is an exploit. It's not affecting the game from the outside. But is that something you really want in your title? And like I said, you really need to be careful with these exploits. Because if you don't acknowledge them, then you're basically saying that you're fine with it. And this can come back to bite you in any game with competitive play or with an in-game economy. If players know that they can, change your screen resolution and lowers the boss's health by 800 points, and that lets them get all the raid level gear, well, that's something that's not good for a competitive atmosphere, or if you're trying to get players to buy and sell gear. And again, this is why for a lot of people that exploiting and cheating are one and the same. Because they see it as you just completely going around the developer's wishes, and just having a completely unfair advantage. And when it comes down to this is where it's very important to make those changes to the game and always keep an eye on what's going on. Now, we could argue, or what really skirts the line, are very powerful or false choices that are built into the meta. As we talk about with meta game design, that if X, Y, and Z are proven to be the best options, the best card combination, best perks, whatever, everybody is going to use it and it's going to solidify the meta. So then you either have to use it and everything becomes one note, or you have to build against it and everything becomes one note again. And this is where you always have to keep an eye on those things. But with that said, we're going to wrap up today's critical thought here. So again, to summarize, cheating is when a player will go outside the game to modify or change the game against the developer's wishes, while exploiting is using what's in the game to gain an unfair advantage or to circumvent the design. And typically, exploits are looked at more favorably. Again, with exception to when they're impacting a multiplayer or competitive-based environment. For those of you watching this, besides the questions I ask about your thoughts on it, can you think of really popular or well-known examples of exploits that were left into a multiplayer environment? And did the designer leave them in or try to change them, and were they met with any unintended backlash? Let me know in the comments below, but thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. So until next time, have a great night. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and come back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. For a collection of my writings, as well as weekly podcasts on game development, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. Follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day. And to help support everything that I do, you can find me on Patreon under GWBycer or Game Wisdom. Your donations can help to keep things running, and we hit some goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy. So, thanks again for watching, and be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design on the Game Wisdom channel.